I want to take a few moments to address the shocking and terrible murder that took place yesterday, the murder of Charlie Kirk. This was a tragedy that has shaken many people, regardless of their political beliefs. I want to begin by saying something personal. I disagreed with Charlie Kirk on almost every major issue. Our views on politics, society, and the future of this country could not have been more different. But none of that matters right now. What matters is that a life was taken in an act of violence. Charlie Kirk was someone who, whether you agreed with him or not, was undeniably a strong, intelligent, and effective communicator. He built a movement, he inspired young people, and he was not afraid to go out into the public square, defend his ideas, and take part in America's great tradition of debate and civic life. That kind of courage to speak and to engage, is something we should recognize even when we strongly disagree with the message. My heartfelt condolences go out to his wife, his family, his friends, and all those who worked alongside him. They have lost someone they loved, and our country, too, has lost someone who believed deeply in his convictions and was willing to fight for them in the public arena. Now, let us step back and talk about what this means. Not just for one family, not just for one political movement, but for all of us as Americans. A free and democratic society, what America is supposed to be at its core, depends on a very basic principle. That principle is this: people must be able to speak out, organize, and take part in public life without fear of being harmed, without fear of being silenced through violence or intimidation. If that principle is lost, then freedom itself is lost. Freedom and democracy do not mean we all agree. They mean the exact opposite. We will disagree, sometimes passionately, sometimes fiercely, but the foundation of freedom is that we settle those disagreements not through force or intimidation, but through discussion, through debate, and ultimately through the ballot box. You have your point of view. I have mine. We argue, we persuade, and then the people decide. That is democracy. That is freedom. Political violence destroys that foundation. Violence is not a form of persuasion. It is not a form of civic engagement. Violence is an admission of failure. It says, I cannot convince people of my ideas, so I will try to impose them through fear. That is not strength. That is political cowardice. And when violence enters politics, it poisons everything. People stop speaking out. People withdraw from public life. The marketplace of ideas becomes a battlefield of intimidation. Every American, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, must reject that path. We must condemn political violence no matter who commits it, no matter who the target is, because once we accept it in one case, it becomes easier to accept it in another. And before long, no one is safe. Not the left, not the right, not the center. The murder of Charlie Kirk must be seen in the context of a disturbing rise in political violence in our nation. In recent years, we have seen too many examples. We remember the attack on the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. We remember the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. We remember the brutal attack on Paul Pelosi in his own home. We remember the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. We recall the murder of Minnesota's Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband. We saw the attack in Austin targeting Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. We learned of the shooting of United Health executive Brian Thompson. And of course, we cannot forget the shooting of Representative Steve Scalise and others several years ago at a congressional baseball practice. These are not isolated events. They are part of a chilling pattern, a rise in political violence that is shaking public life in America. And let us be very clear, this violence has no single ideology. It has no single party. It has no single side. It has struck Republicans, Democrats, independents, public servants, business leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens who chose to speak up. And sadly, as shocking as this feels, it is not new to our history. Political violence has scarred America before. We remember the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. We remember the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We remember the killing of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. We remember the murder of Medgar Evers, the assassination of John Lennon, and the attempted assassinations of President Ronald Reagan and Alabama Governor George Wallace. Each of these moments left wounds in our national memory, and each was a reminder that violence aimed at silencing voices cannot be tolerated in a free society. Today, we face a moment of deep division. Our democracy is under pressure, not just here in the United States, but around the world. We live in a time of polarization, disinformation, and growing mistrust. It is a difficult and contentious era in our history. But in such moments, it becomes even more important to stand firm on the principles that make freedom possible. If we believe in democracy, we must believe in participation. We must encourage people of all views, liberal, conservative, moderate, radical, whatever they may be, to speak up, to organize, to vote, and to join the public conversation. But none of that will happen if people are afraid. If political violence becomes normalized, participation shrinks, the loudest and angriest voices dominate, while ordinary citizens retreat into silence. That is the death of democracy. We cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow fear to govern us. The essence of democracy is not agreement. It is peaceful disagreement. It is the recognition that my opponent is not my enemy, that my rival is not my target, that my fellow citizen, even if I oppose everything they stand for, still has the right to speak, to assemble, and to live without fear of being harmed. That is why the murder of Charlie Kirk and the other acts of violence we have seen must be a wake-up call. They must remind us that democracy is fragile, that freedom requires courage, and that political disagreement must never be resolved through bloodshed. So let us be absolutely clear. Political violence, regardless of ideology, regardless of who it targets, has no place in America. It is not an expression of strength. It is not a tool of justice. It is not the way forward. It is the path to destruction. What we need instead is courage of a different kind. The courage to listen. The courage to argue passionately but peacefully. The courage to stand for what we believe in without threatening those who disagree. And the courage to protect the rights of even those whose views we despise. That is the meaning of democracy. That is the meaning of freedom. And if we truly care about this country and its future, we must all, left, right, and center, stand together in saying, enough is enough. Political violence is not the answer. It never was, and it never will be. Thank you very much. It never will be. Thank you very much.